Good afternoon. This is Pseudonymous. Instead of this rubbish course, you'll be treated to my course. This Professor Limnell.
No, this is my course. Oh! Okay, good afternoon, everybody, both here in the lecture hall as well as through digital channels. Warm welcome once again to Aalto University's public lecture series, Internet Forum, and as you know, the topic and the theme for this autumn is technology, security and future. So very topical issue. And let me remind you in the beginning that all the previous lectures, for example, from the last time, they are already in YouTube and can be watched over there. So if you want to check, please. But today we will go forward, and I can promise you that we have two excellent and very interesting lectures this evening. And we will start with gentleman Esa Rautalinko, who is CEO at Patria. And I can see that there is in the first slide new Patria label. But if I may, Esa, in the beginning, I know that you have been working with defense and security issues for many years and for the long time. How would you describe how exceptional times from the security point of view we are living at the moment?
We haven't seen these kind of conditions when we are talking about Finland or any of the countries where we operate. This hasn't happened since the end of Second World War. So that's where we are, honestly, and so very exceptional times.
How this is affecting your business and activities in Patria?
Well, basically we can see that the demand is increasing basically as we speak. So that's the effect of the crisis in Ukraine, but I think nobody is closing in the industry that this is fantastic for business. I think everybody would take smaller numbers in exchange for security. But this is where we are. This is a situation which we haven't chosen, and now we are acting accordingly.
Yes. Hey, warm welcome to Aalto University, and please, floor is yours.
Thank you. So good late afternoon to everybody here at the Aalto University and you guys who are online. The theme of my presentation today is that where's the focus in developing defense capabilities? So what is now actually happening when we are talking about the industry as such? Not just Finland, but all European countries, and I might dare to say that in all of the Western world. Couple of background slides so that you can have a sort of a backdrop what Patria is all about. So in Finland, our basic duty and the reason why the society, the state of Finland owns a majority from us, 50.1%, is to make sure that in all possible conditions, peace, war or anything between, we are there in all conditions. So we are responsible of supplying our part of the security supply in Finland. And also to other countries, naturally, where we have similar types of agreements. Sweden is a good example of that one. But no matter the conditions, rain or shine, we are there. And this is our mission, so a vision that we want to be the number one partner for critical operations in the fields where we are present. You've heard a phrase, strategic partnership, in many contexts. I'm sure about that one. But when we are talking about defense and the military, it has a very specific meaning. It means that actually the companies who actually are tied with agreements into strategic partnership, it means that everything has been agreed in advance. In the most unfortunate conditions, like a condition of war, it is exact. We know exactly what's our role, who's going to do what, and so forth. And that's also something we are practicing regularly. So the meaning of being a strategic partner is something else than you might find in other industries. And then there's a description of the key capabilities which we are providing. First of all, to the Finnish Defence Forces, but also to our customers abroad. The vast majority of our actions is maintenance, repair, overhaul, damage repairs, midlife upgrades, lifespan extensions, improvements, and so forth. And around 30% of our operations is something else, like radars, sensors, cyber, vehicles, and so forth. And just so that you know, we are permanently present in 10 European countries. When I began in this position 3 years ago, there were 5 countries. Now there's 10, and most likely there will be more as we go forward. So we have a European presence, then certain other activities outside of Europe. So that's a sort of a Patria backdrop and some examples. What are we doing at the moment? Vehicles, motor systems, and so forth. A lot of cyber intelligence, surveillance, and so forth. And then at the rock bottom over there, which is the foundation for our operations, is maintenance, repair, overhaul, and so forth. Meaning also that we have very advanced capabilities on Finnish soil when it comes to repairs, for instance. So as you know, the old phrase, Finland is a logistical island. Unfortunately, that is true. So it actually means that should there be a crisis in Finland, so we are not totally, but pretty far we are self-sustained. And we have capabilities other countries usually do not have. But then over to Ukraine. And what are the learnings and basically what has happened now during the past 8 months, 7.5 months, bearing in mind that the war type conditions have existed in Ukraine since 2014. I think there was a good reminder just to bear in mind is that has all of this been planned beforehand by Russia? I'm totally convinced it has. This has been a long-term plan for at least 15 years. Also bearing in mind Georgia, 2008, what was the action that actually Russia did in 2008 in Georgia? They blew up a gas pipe. Ring any bells? So there's a long-term plan behind this, and that's something we need to bear in mind, or at least to take as an assumption, which also means that there most likely is a long-term plan ahead. So what's happening just now today in Ukraine most likely is a disappointment to Russia, but does it mean that they are going to give up? Hopefully they will, but we need to be prepared that these kind of conditions are going to continue for years, unfortunately. So some learning points from Ukraine without being a soldier, but looking this through industry spectacles and based on various discussions. So first of all, and these are not in a priority order, but I think the scenarios of a so-called modern warfare, meaning that there would be massive attacks in electronic warfare, there would be surgical strikes done from a great distance to certain strategic targets. This is not at all what's happening in Ukraine at the moment. So these assumptions, if anybody had these beforehand, have been proven out to be wrong assumptions. We are back in the 1940s in that sense. So meaning that land forces have a key role in order to gain territory, or in order to control a certain territory, or in order to regain the stolen territory. So land forces have a key role. And this will have certain implications, as you'll see later on. EW, so electronic warfare capabilities, they have been exaggerated. I think the common, if not understanding, but consensus in the Western world was that actually Russia has very advanced electronic warfare capabilities. If they do, we haven't seen them yet. which basically, I think, means that they don't have those capabilities. And just if you are thinking about that modern warfare, extremely advanced electronic warfare capabilities, all those assumptions that now have been proven out wrong actually are reflected in the capabilities that the Western countries have today. And that naturally, that needs to be corrected. Long-range kinetic capabilities, basically meaning that artilleries, missiles, so forth, from long enough distance, now talking about tens of kilometers, that's becoming more and more crucial. And bearing in mind that the Western artillery, as a general assumption, has not been performing too well in the past. The development of the Western artillery capabilities, the development of ammunition, has not really taken any bigger steps since the 1960s or 70s. But that's also going to change. It has already started to change. There was a lot of discussion, still is to some extent, that main battle tanks, armored vehicles, infantry fighting vehicles, they are all dead. They are not going to be used in modern warfare. Proven out to be wrong, which actually means that anti-tank weaponry, that type of deterrence today is crucial. Without those capabilities delivered by the Western countries over to Ukraine, it might well be that the war would already be over. So that's how crucial it is. Then if somebody says, well, if one has anti-tank capabilities and those are advanced enough, doesn't it actually then mean that armored vehicles, they are dead? If the deterrence is so effective? Actually, no, I think the military people might confirm to you that actually we need to bear in mind the faulty strategy and tactics of Russia, how the equipment has been used. Ammunition, securing the availability of ammunition. There has been, several experts have estimated that today Ukraine is using around 5,000 artillery rounds per day. Russia using between 50 and 100,000 per day, which actually means that now we are in a consumption war in that respect. So securing the availability of ammunition, extremely crucial. Are the European countries or the US, have the European countries and the US been prepared for this one? No. It's absolutely obvious that that's not the case. So now also those capabilities are ramped up. And then I think a final learning point from Ukraine is national security of supply. It's a coincidence, but around 2 years ago there was a seminar in Scotland where I was speaking about security of supply, and I was using as an example personal protection gear just in the middle of COVID, face masks and so forth, saying that such a simple line of products at the end of the day, and the Western countries ended up stealing each other's loads from airports. So there was no security of supply in that kind of equipment anywhere in Europe, as a general rule. And I still remember I said that, God forbid if there was war. Well, now it's on our front door or back door, depending on your personal viewpoints. So luckily enough, Finland has been really a pathfinder in this one. We still have a lot of things to be improved, but there's a lot of European countries where there's not, or the majority of European countries, they don't even have a system for national security of supply. So what are now the key development priorities when thinking about capabilities? What really is needed? So availability of ammunition, that's by far at the moment the most crucial thing to be fixed in helping and supporting Ukraine. I think there's no question about that one. Availability of ammunition, and then we are talking about all calibers. Artillery, we are talking about smaller calibers, smaller artillery calibers, anti-tank weapons, and at the end of the day, also small calibers, meaning rifle calibers. So all of that is a consumption item at the moment, and the consumption rate is pretty high. So all the countries who are supporting Ukraine, we need to ramp up our capabilities, and at the same time keep in mind that yes, we need to secure our own national security supply. We cannot empty our warehouses. All of these capabilities were neglected during the past 20 years, or basically after the collapse of the Soviet Union, and that was 31 years ago, when the general assumption was that we are talking about international peacekeeping missions, war-type conditions, or war itself in Europe is totally an impossibility. It was not too fashionable. It was not in vogue to develop these capabilities, with certain exceptions. Finland once again being the stubborn one, who was stated to be old-fashioned and not flexible enough to realize the realities of the 90s and the early 2000s. And today, glad we were stubborn at that same time. But unfortunately, basically the rest of Europe neglected these preparations. Then operational condition and deployment time, meaning let's take Russia as an example. Everybody, all of us, we remember the pictures from March, April last springtime, when there were bursted tires and non-functional equipment the Russians sent over to Ukraine. So now the development priority in all of the European countries is to go through the stockpile of equipment everybody has. What is the working order of that one? What's the deployment rate, meaning that if the equipment is needed, so how much time does it take for the equipment to be sent over? So this is crucial, and I dare to say that there's a large number of European countries who didn't even have an idea about this one. Then the third point over there is that now we are coming back to EU legislation, which basically states, with one exception, but all procurements that the European Union countries are doing, they have to be open for competition. With one exception, if it's a matter of national security. And there are certain European countries, unfortunately the biggest ones, who have been pretty liberal in their idea that what's a definition of national security, which has led into a situation that their domestic industries are not in the most competitive stance at the moment, and it also means that the European equipment, it's interoperable, but that's basically it. So now, based on the EU legislation, so the only thing the countries can do quickly is to procure more additional materials with existing standards, either from their own domestic industry using the EU exception rule, or then to call in certain options from procurements they have made from a third country. But buying new capabilities, which is the fifth point over there, that will take more time. It needs to be open for tendering. That will take at least 2 or 3 years with all possible complaint rounds and so forth. So that takes a lot of time. But in between, also bearing in mind that the typical lifespan of any military equipment, whether it's aircraft, whether it's land equipment, meaning vehicles and so forth, and naval vessels, the typical lifespan is around 30 years. That's the conventional thinking. And somewhere in between, it needs to be upgraded, modernized, and so forth. But basically this means it's only a few % of the equipment that's actually procured new every single year. So the vast majority, over 95% of the European equipment is some kind of it's a legacy fleet. And now the question is, together with the deployment rate, the usability, we need to start modifying and upgrading the existing equipment to new performances and so forth. There are various incentives for this one. There are various European agendas. It's about climate change, which still we must not forget about. So we can tackle those issues. Certain operational issues can be tackled at the same time, giving added benefits and so forth. It's a sensible way to utilize natural resource and so forth. Meaning that there are examples from Finland, for instance, from vehicles that actually should have been obsolete a couple of years ago, that have now all been modernized, and Finland will still be using those in the 2040s, and they are totally modernized. So that will happen. But then procuring totally new capabilities, that's a little bit tricky one, because of the reasons I mentioned. Then there are certain workarounds for this. If there's more than one European country and they start a joint development program, then according to EU legislation, that's a multinational program, meaning that the countries that are joining that program can avoid certain competition difficulties. But this is also a sort of a marching order. What's in stock? What's the operational capability of that one? How fast can it be deployed? How are we going to upgrade it, modernize it, and then should we procure something more that we already that we already have? Then there are certain new capabilities that actually, so the last point of the previous slide, which will be developed and which will be procured. I'm totally convinced about that one. Extended range ammunition. If you are thinking about the normal artillery ranges from 30 to maybe 40 kilometers, so that's the conventional range of artillery, hasn't really developed in the past many decades. Now there are technologies that already have been introduced and are already on the verge of operational use, meaning that without upgrading your hardware, you can reach distances between 50, 60 kilometers, then you change ammunition, you're up to 70, 80, even 90, and then certain ammunition capabilities plus 100 kilometers, and that's just around the corner. So also meaning that instead of replacing the whole weapon system, that will take an incredible amount of time and money. So what about utilizing the hardware and utilizing the ammunition? And these are the capabilities that the Western world, NATO allies, plus certain other countries like Finland are developing at the moment. And the first implication of this one was the procurement of the Finnish military that was released only a few days back, meaning certain base bleed grenades, which basically mean that we are somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 kilometers. But there's more to come. So that's clearly a development phase. APCs and HAPCs, so armed personal carriers and heavy armed personal carriers. This was also something that actually, where most of the European countries and even the US have large legacy fleets that actually originate from somewhere the 70s, 80s, early 90s. And the reason why the development in this front has been pretty slow is exactly the point that the idea of so-called modern warfare was something totally else than what we see today in Ukraine. So yes, it still has a huge role that troops need to be transported safe enough, fast enough. So that's where this equipment is needed. The difference between an APC and a heavy APC is the protection level. But this is now happening, and it's happening in many countries where we are involved at the moment. So there are now programs that are going forward fast, meaning that next generation vehicles are going to be present. First country who actually took deliveries of this was Latvia, starting last year. Totally new generation, easy to manufacture vehicles that are for fast troop transportations. IFVs, infantry fighting vehicles, also not very fashionable only some time ago, but actually meaning that supporting the troops on land with fighting vehicles that are heavy enough but not main battle tanks. Those capabilities for support purposes and for supporting an attack or reclaiming lost land. Those capabilities are needed. MBT, so main battle tank, enhanced capabilities. As I mentioned, there has been writing. Still, certain people have that view, but I think the tide has changed. That the main battle tank is not dead. If you are looking at the headlines of Ukraine, they have been asking for modern main battle tanks for quite some time, basically from the beginning of the current state of the war, for over a half a year ago. The Western countries have been pretty hesitant about this one. I think there are more reasons than just provoking Russia. There are certain technological reasons and what kind of risks certain countries are willing to take in handing over capabilities that might end up in wrong hands, so stuff like that. But main battle tanks, they are needed. It's pretty difficult to reclaim any lost land without these capabilities. C5I star, meaning cyber computers, communication, etc., intelligence, target acquisition, reconnaissance. So basically all the so-called electronic capabilities, radars, sensors, how to share a common joint view to the troops, what's happening on the battlefield, what's expected to happen, sharing information. That has been on the map for quite some time, but I think now we can also see that is a crucial meaning. This is purely myself guessing, but I think that one key reason why Ukraine has now performed pretty well in the current state is that their capabilities to form a picture about the battlefield is pretty good. It seems that the most likely is even better than the Russians have. And it's also good to remember that from open sources that the Western allied countries have delivered those capabilities, starting from AWACS and so forth. So that picture, what's happening right here, right now, is delivered to the Ukrainian troops. So those capabilities will continue to develop. Hypersonic missiles. That's clearly one thing that actually is now a topic. There has been a lot of talk about Russian capabilities, the caliber missile, hypersonic, and so forth. I don't know, it might well be that it's more talk than actual substance, but those capabilities are something I think all major powers are developing at the moment. There's no question about that one. And the reason naturally is that the speed itself is protecting the missile not to be shot down. And there aren't too many capable systems that actually would work against hypersonic at the moment. Eventually those capabilities will be there, but this is where the market and the need is today. Then in Ukraine, there hasn't really been too much naval activity, at least what we know of. But still at the same time, as the most navies in the world say today, that all capabilities, all performance that's underwater is of great interest. And that comes to surveillance, that comes to target detection and to certain kinetic/destructive actions. So those are the things that really are below the surface, but there's a lot of stuff happening on that domain today. And then I just wanted to mention, even though it's including the C5I-STAR, but cyber, still yet again, those capabilities definitely are going to be developed, and also meaning that cyber as a tool to have an active effect on the enemy, not just protecting yourself, but it can also be used as a weapon, as we have seen. But that's clearly what the industry is doing today, developing those capabilities. And at the moment, I'm not talking about Patria. This is a general finding of the industry, what's happening. So what has already happened now after Ukraine? So we know that the defense budget, they have been increased. They have been increased throughout Europe. A lesser known thing that actually hasn't really made any headlines is that the US defense budget during the past 2 years has increased by more than $100 billion. Now the spend level is over $800 billion per year. But throughout Europe, this is increasing at the moment. The ammunition manufacturing, that has been ramped up, but there we need to remember that in that type of work, there's only so much you can do with existing capabilities and capacities. So capacity investments will follow, but that naturally will take some time. And then bearing in mind that we still are suffering from the supply chain issues we started to see in the beginning of the pandemic. So raw materials, availability, machinery, components, and so forth. All of that is also a fact of life over here. EDF, meaning European Defence Fund, those joint program fundings, they are now speeding up. There was an initiative that actually started around 4 years ago, but now we can see that there's increased interest in Europe to find common programs. Then the question is that the needs of different member states are different from each other. So then the question is that what's the biggest common denominator we should be choosing and to develop the capabilities around that one. Then price performance ratio, because we know that actually with the money allocated, even though in most of the European countries, so the extra funding now allocated or promised by politicians is substantial, but it doesn't mean that the price performance factor would somehow be neglected. I think it's even more important than before, because now the countries, they need volumes, and they need volumes fast, which also leads that delivery times absolutely crucial. Even if you have the best possible offering with the most attractive price, but your delivery time is too slow, you are not going to have the deal. But ideal, price performance ratio second to none, and speedy deliveries, meaning within a few months, that's a winning combination. The modernization of fleets, as I said, that's now rapidly proceeding. Not using Finland as an example, Sweden has taken very fast steps over here. I would say that all the major military powers in Europe, they have already taken action around this one, and I'm pretty sure that by the end of the year there will be more. So fleets will be modernized. Decision making faster than before, even though still bearing in mind that when we are talking about defense industry, nothing is fast, but still it's by far faster than it used to be less than a year ago. And then the EU, US, allied, all of that cooperation, it's on a historical level. We can clearly see that today the Ukrainian cause and the security of Europe, and at the end of the day the security of the world, that's on everybody's agenda. So certain, I feel at least, industrial differences of opinion and so forth, they are, if not totally history, but those are smaller today than they used to be. Just some examples how the defense budgets have gone gone up, and basically we can see that there are different levels of commitments, but basically every single nation, as an example, has increased their defense budgets. Certain countries are also giving longer term commitments, at least to meet the 2% GDP spend to defense. Then there are big ones like Germany, plus 100 billion euros into defense for the next few years. Originally it was 5 years, most likely it's going to take more than 5, but that's clearly the ambition, bearing in mind that their defense budget already today has been almost 60 billion. So then the question is that everybody needs fast deliveries, fast capabilities. Previously it used to be so that the politicians could show that under our rule we have done something. Now I think there's a more profound motive behind this one. We need to ramp up our capabilities, never mind the politics. So then maybe to the end, what kind of possibilities and challenges there are at the moment from the perspective of the industry? So clearly at the moment, increasing the defense capability, there's a win-win possibility both in increasing our capabilities throughout Europe and also economically. I'm not just talking about defense. There's a huge ecosystem of companies behind the defense industry. So this is both, this is something we need at the moment, but then at the end of the day, it should also be an economical win-win. Faster decisions, talked about that one, they could be even speedier. I think that clearly is a possibility. And then I think a very interesting point, which actually the German National Armaments Director said, so basically the person who's responsible of the performance of the German military when it comes to the equipment they have. He said that the term interoperable is dead, meaning that yes, various types of equipment they can from various nations, they can still play the same game. He said that now the word is interchangeable or even identical, basically meaning that the more we have common nominating factors in the capabilities we have today, the easier and more economical it's also to organize security of supply, spare parts, and so forth. And that was a very welcome statement, and we can already see certain decisions taken based on that. Advantages of scale, that will also now come. That's very clear. Then R&D investments. I think at the same time we need to think about the longer game. It would be dangerous if we are just thinking about Ukraine here and today and what we can do as European countries. We need to be capable of thinking in 2 time periods at the same time. What's happening here and now and just today as we speak and in the coming months. But what about 5 years? What about maybe 10 years? There was an assessment from a military expert who said that from the moment when the war in Ukraine is over, it will take Russia between 3 to 5 years, and they are capable again to threaten somebody else. So maybe give it 5 years, and they will build up the capabilities they have now lost. So it's extremely important for all countries to bear this one also in mind. So meaning that if the war ended today in Ukraine, hopefully the European countries are also learn their lessons that it does not mean that then we could ramp down the activities. This is something that we need to live on at least throughout the whole 2020s. And new and strengthening partnerships, those have already started to form, and countries that actually, and even companies who were not actually cooperating before, they are cooperating today, and I'm convinced that that's the way where it's going to go even more strongly in the future. Then certain challenges, naturally, even problems, availability of components and raw materials. That clearly is the point today. Needs to be bear in mind. It depends naturally what kind of components or raw materials we are talking about. Everybody understands the shortage of chips and so forth. and certain other crucial components. Those capabilities, hopefully the European countries will bring back to European soil. Not just because it makes sense in the normal world, what we have learned from COVID, but also crucial for our security of supply. Bearing in mind that the single biggest source as a country or region for really advanced chips and processors today is Taiwan. And then you can do the math, what we are talking about. Inflation, clear an issue over here too. The biggest issue with inflation today is that it's very hard to give any fixed prices to anybody. Availability of raw materials is a little bit challenging. Until now, it has only been so that basically the delivery times are longer, but there will be, and they already are, certain shortages. And then how to fix prices at the same time, which actually means that the slower the industry is able to deliver, the less bang for the buck the nations and their defense forces will have. Capacity needs, not going to go into details over here. There are certain areas of operations and production where capacity needs actually are pretty easy to solve. Then there are areas where they are very hard to solve. The more we are talking about really profoundly industrial processes, automation and so forth, the more time and money it will take. And I think today it's not about just money, it's about the delivery time, when that's going to be available. Then availability of workforce, that's a fact in all the countries, especially skilled people who will pass security clearances. And that's a key over here. So there's quite a many boxes one needs to tick. So that's something the defense industry is now working with. I'm pretty sure that we are going to find solutions for that one, but it's not an easy one. And then at the end of the day, still challenges. We are talking about a very protectionist market. Every country's defense industry is pretty reluctant to allow anybody else to enter their turf. And now hopefully the crisis in Ukraine, the war in Ukraine will show that actually none of the European countries is strong enough to solve the industrial challenges by themselves. Not even the US is big enough. Not even the biggest defense companies in the world can play this game alone. So hopefully we'll find answers for this. But there's a word of hope. I think we are today, the defense industry is better prepared than we were in late February. We are better prepared than we were last summer. So those capabilities are ramped up at the moment. And we know that Russia is struggling with this. So the capabilities of the West, the equipment we already have today, it's totally overwhelming compared to the capabilities Russia has. But let's not make the mistake that we are underestimating anybody given a certain time frame. So that was my presentation. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Esa Rautalinko, CEO at Patria. Very, very interesting points, and I'm following in the internet that there is lively discussion about your presentation ongoing, and you can see some of the questions also on the wall. If you may, Esa, a few questions of those. For example, I think that's pretty interesting that is Patria supplying armored vehicles to Ukraine at the moment?
Not directly. No, we are not supporting delivering. And the point is that how it goes, that actually all the decisions, whatever support Finland is sending over to Ukraine, that's a decision of the Finnish government. And at the end of the day, it's going to be organized by the Ministry of Defense and then the Finnish Defense Forces. So based on what they are delivering, so we are going to act accordingly. So that's where we are not doing anything directly at the moment. If we did, I'm not sure if I would tell you, but that's how it goes. So we need to have some coordination over there. The first one is pretty interesting. Is it challenging to find a skilled workforce? Yes, it's challenging because of the availability of people. Do we have enough skilled people in Finland? But is it difficult based on their values? No. There has never been, I think, and people who have been working for the company for years said that there has never been such an interest towards Patria. And I think that speaks volumes about Finland, but also in certain other countries. So there's a lot of people who are willing open-heartedly to join us. Then the question is that, can we use those people from various reasons?
What about you? Talk a little bit about the Russian capabilities, especially from the military industry point of view. But do you agree that can we expect that the Russian capabilities are actually better shape in after plus 5 years when this old military equipment are consumed?
I have my doubts. Now the question is that we need to make sure that the sanctions stay long enough over there. I'll give you an example. The production, according to certain sources, industrial sources, the production of Russian main battle tanks ended pretty early last spring. The reason being that the French company was not sending over night vision equipment anymore, which in a way that after Crimea in 2014 they were still shipping stuff over to Russia. But yes, I think with the current capabilities and up to 5 years or so, I think they are able to produce, but I have serious doubts that they could produce anything that would be you could compare to Western capabilities. But give it 10 years.
Yeah.
Or so forth. So it might be a different ballpark, and who knows what kind of allies they will find.
Absolutely. Yeah. I have to say that it was quite big numbers when you mentioned about the consuming ammunitions at the moment in Ukraine.
Yeah.
What would you say? Last question. Then we have to go forward. We have many students here in Aalto University studying different technological skills and other issues. What would be your main message to students in this field in Aalto University?
Well, basically study and join us, but I'll give you a small pitch. Yes. I would dare to say that if you really are, for instance, into coding and so forth, you will be amazed. What's happening today, what will happen tomorrow, what's happening in AI and so forth. So it's a world of opportunities. And once you are okay with your internal values, that it's okay to defend one's own country, which should be a no-brainer. It's a dream place to work. There's no question about that one. So we need you guys.
Excellent speech. Thank you very much, Esa Rautalinko, for your excellent presentation. And we will go forward. We will have 2 minutes break for some technological issues, since next lecturer Mika Hyytiäinen is going to present through digital channels. So 2 minutes and we will continue. Thank you, Esa.
You're welcome.
Mika Hyytiäinen, military professor, retired from National Defense University, and more or less, if I may say, Mika, you have been learning and teaching these military skills and hybrid issues and how to survive in war more or less your whole life. So before you start, my same question actually to you that I asked Esa Rautalinko in the beginning of his presentation. How exceptional times, Mika, do you think that we are living at the moment?
I have to say that these are exceptional times, but these are actually the times that I have been preparing for at least for my career as a whole time. And for me, the exceptional time comes from that I have been 25 years wrong, and now the last maybe 5 years quite right, and now about what it takes, half a year right. So yes, these are exceptional times.
Very good. So warm welcome, Mika. Please, floor is yours.
Thank you. So I'm going to talk about cyber, and I'm going to tell something about myself also when I go on. So I'm not going to tell all the things in the first place. So what Esa already told you, for me, cyber is actually a weapon. Well, actually, it's a set of weapons. So that's why there are plurals in there, cybers, and keys and weapons. So that's very important when you are listening to me. I was a professor of tactics and operations. Tactics is actually, very simply put, it's a winning battles. So it's not something very peculiar. We divide it in English as an art of war, which actually is the skill of using your troops and equipment and things, all those things that you have in hand in a clever way. And then the science of war is more like what kind of weapons and what you train your troops for. So that's tactics. And I'm not talking about leadership, and I'm not talking about humans as such. I'm talking quite of it's for me the tactics is more like chess than the whole of the world, whole war. Operations are actually sets of battles. They are chain of battles, and when you go to the highest level of courses in the defense university, you learn how to do joint operations. And joint operations in military means that you can use Army, Navy, and Air Force as a traditional way to the same goal. But in hybrid, it's a lot more complicated, and there's no teaching of using the hybrid in the same way that we are teaching military to use this. So, and I'm not talking about theories. So I'm not making any definitions. I'm trying to talk you about some issues, and I hope that you get some understanding how I'm thinking. And if you want to make a definition about from that, it's okay. But actually, I don't actually believe in definitions in warfare that much, because all of those big guys, what we call theoricians like Clausewitz, actually they were seeing things happening in the war, and then they theoretized that. So all the inventions in the war are not based on theory. They are based on applying things. And then the theory comes behind and tries to explain what happened. I have a word keys in there, or key. In normal ways, the cyber is discussed in Finland as a key to prevent, as a key to secure, the key to protect. So it's a lock. But now when I'm talking about cyber as a weapon, I'm talking about opening those doors. Open in order to steal something, alter something, use something, manipulate something. So I'm talking about attacking. So that's actually the theme that I'm discussing today. The vice versa, you will understand in the last part of my presentation. So I'm not talking that still. The most important phrase that I want you to understand is weaponization. I have a book in here in my desk in Tampere, The Weaponization of Everything, a field guide to a new way of war, which was written by Mark Galeotti, and it was published this year, actually on January. And he's discussing about making weapons from the ordinary things. And I have been thinking about that for several years now when I've been teaching, for example, in the national security courses. And I didn't turn this in English because this is an old picture that I'm using, but I'm going to explain that. It's actually from the days that the big picture when I was engineer officer. It was my first IT program, and I tried to make an express IT system for the engineers, the military engineers, who blow up things, who lay mines, but also we build bridges. The blue that you can see there, it is a river, but actually it's not a river in Finland. It's a narrow ditch. It goes in the bottom of a shallow muddy canyon, somewhere in the Elimäki, for example. And actually it is almost impossible to cross with the military equipment, also with the engineer equipment. So 99% of that small ditch is actually something that is hindering you. But there are some weaknesses in that ditch. If you go that through in the peacetime, you collect all the data and you collect the places and you test them. You can find some places where actually the muddiness is not so big. Even though that it's a narrow, the narrowness is exactly right for the military bridge. It's holding enough, and you can actually go there with your weapon systems, tanks, and things like that. So the field is not too muddy, and those are weaknesses of the ditch. And in the war, you hope that when the commander says that we are going there, and you are the engineer chief, you hope that those dots that I have put there, there are quite as many. You hope that there are many of those. I call them raisins in the bun. And then you know that I have a possibility, even though that I can't actually go there. I know that there are places where I can go, and somebody has already planned that you can use that part of in the ditch. So it is something that where the ditch is weak, and actually that is weaponization. It's looking for something on your opposite that you can actually weaponize. So it's not using your weapons. Of course, you have to have the bridge. And if you have a lot of bridges, you are better. But if you have small bridges, well, still you can do your job. Well, the cyber. Well, APT, the Advanced Persistent Threat Attack Type, is actually something that you make a decision that I'm going from there. And then you start building the bridge on the peacetime. All the time you are building it, you are hoping that you will build it on time before the attack comes. And it takes a lot of time. You can also knock on all doors at the same time in cyber. Of course, that's not so effective as a one knock. But if you are knocking the whole of the ditch, you will find out some places where you probably can do and you can probably exploit. And then there are different kind of techniques. So this is how I think about the cyber in tactics. Well, I have to go back a few years first, so you understand about how I have been thinking. We go back to the year 2013, about 10 years back. It was a year when Finland was making the cyber strategy was already there, but we were making actually the cyber implementation plan for the whole society. I remind you that cyber is not a threat. Cyber is something that you exploit. Cyber is something that you put your business in. And actually the security part in there is actually securing the use of the cyber. And the exercise that I was participating was the preparedness exercise in the very highest level. And I was actually the chief assessor. So I had an ability to go all the preparing phases, and I could go in all of the meetings where people were thinking about this. The picture is actually from not the latest security strategy, but the one before that. The Annex 3 is actually the matrix, and I kind of zoomed out of that, so you can understand that the matrix is there in the behind, and those silos that you can call about security authorities or ministries are there. Those lines that are going from bottom to up. What has happened in the security is that we have done actually structures that are helping us. The first dot there is something that we found out that it's missing altogether. In 9/11, the United States understood that they are missing the whole Homeland Security Office. So they invented a new silo. The block in there in the middle, it's like Maritime Authorities Cooperation, which has now been in process for more than 23 years. There are 5 authorities, and what they are doing, they are sharing the situational picture in a way that is probably the best in the world. There's also the process called Poliisi, Tulli, Raja, the police, customs and border guards, which started already in the 1920s in Finland, so that they are sharing all the information. And the one in the bottom is actually purely technology. It's like Virve, the Tetra phones that Finnish officials are using, or it's Tuve, the security network that all of the security authorities are using, and that's actually is about communication. So most of the things that combine those silos is not, there are some cultural things, but most of the things are technology things. And actually they are cyber things, and they are cyber that is helping us to do something. And of course you then have to safeguard that. But what I found out in 2013 was this. When you take cyber and try to put it in the boxes, it doesn't go there. It's like you are spilling your coffee cup into the matrix, and you just get dots, and those dots are actually not they are not easy to handle, and the cyber needs a new way of thinking together behind or besides all of the silos. And that's very important to understand. Then I will go to the hybrid battleground. Why I call hybrid and cyber as a different things? No, I'm not, because cyber for me is one part of the hybrid. When I started to learn about this, I started with the United States when I was still working, not as a professor, but in the other application. And we used the letters DIME, diplomatic, information, military, economy. And we were talking about comprehensive approach, which was actually the crisis management thing. In 2014, the NATO commander said when they saw what Russia was doing in the Crimea and then in the eastern part of Ukraine, that this is evil version of comprehensive approach. Actually, that is the systemic way of thinking about the war, but it's also systemic thinking about thinking that you can weaponize almost everything and use it in your benefit. In West, the target is actually on the right; it's citizens. But if you are attacking, for example, a country like Russia, or maybe a country like in a dictatorship, well, the citizens are probably be one of those things that you weaponize. So they are not that kind of a goal or end state. But in Western, I say that the citizens are the most important thing in the map. So it's the biggest dot in there. I also added up one part that the NATO commander didn't have then in 2014, and it's infrastructure, because the United States never makes war, has battles in their own ground. So they don't think that they have to also prevent or protect the infrastructure, but we have to do that. So this is kind of a hybrid battleground. And then what is cyber, or why there are many cybers in there. The first one is easy one. You can block the use of the cyber services. You can lock the computer in the companies, or you can lock the computer of a citizen. You can hijack it. You can hijack a mover or a vacuum cleaner and make the people fear everything that is smart. Make them fear everything in the companies. Make them fear in the government, that everything which is smart. And I'm using those color coding in purpose. Block the use is something which is actually what I'm trying to do. The red is actually the cyber. The purple is actually the information part of this. So even though that you are only using kind of cyber, you have to target it, and probably you have something in the information side which actually you are trying to make happen. So the cyber is a tool, or it is a key to make your things happening. The second example is actually regarding to the economy. Stop invoices. So the citizens or the companies can't get food, petrol, or cash. But actually food, petrol, and cash are actual things. They are not cyber. You need some cyber elements to pay, for example, for them, or the pumps to work, but still the issues are not cyber. And what can be your message if you are using this kind of weapon? Well, of course, it's hindering something that if you don't have, for example, petrol, but hoard while you can. It's the most complicated information asset that anyone can actually try to say to the citizens. If you say that there's no need of hoarding, hamstraus in Finnish, it's impossible to say that in a way that people wouldn't go there and take everything from themselves in the buildings. And it actually eats the trust. The trust is something that the whole community is actually based on in Finland, or in Finnish way. And actually it eats the trust against the nation, against the authorities, against your neighbors, and actually against yourself when you are thinking whether I'm able to provide food, for example, for my family. So it is actually a big thing. And economical cyber things are probably more important than the straight cyber things straight to the services. The robotized information, we are talking about bots a lot. For me, cyber part of the bot is actually the quantity and speed. But the quality in the bot is actually information. They are information warriors who can actually say what the bot is saying, what the bot needs to put more plausible in the internet, what the bot needs to kind of have the effect, what they are trying to do. So and the teaching of the bot is actually not cyber. Teaching of the bot is something who understands something about words and language. So for me, it's not cyber. It is a combined operation. The fourth one, well, there has been talking about this also. You can steal with cyber, but when you are using the information, it's probably not cyber. Because when you are using the information that you stole, you are making better decisions. When you are publishing the secrets that you stole, you are actually making information warfare. You time it in a new way. You are altering the information just a bit to make your position clear and make people think that can this actually be true? And then you are also taking the trust out of the society. Of course, you can attack straight to the infrastructure. I'm not so keen on learning about Internet of Things. I'm more keen on learning industrial Internet of Things. So you can go inside the real systems, the paper mills, the water stations. You can do things what Stuxnet did, and actually break something up inside inside the hard kind of way how the modern societies work. And of course, then also there's an information part of this. But actually, there are two cybers in here. First, there's a cyber warrior who gets in, who uses the key. But then there's a paper mill engineer who makes the damage. They are both cyber guys, but the paper mill guy is actually on the positive side of cyber. And the guy who opens the door is in the negative side of the cyber. And they are actually two different guys. And you have to find the first guy who is actually doing the damage with you before you start working, because he tells you what to look for, where to go, and he understands when you are inside. And this is very important. I'm going to get there next. And then the last part, the real weapons that actually you heard Rautalinko to talk about. All the weapons are nowadays smart. They are smart in many ways. Inside, they are smart. They are offside the weapon systems. They are smart because they are talking to each other. And I'm going to talk about those positional systems, electronic warfare, and some other letters a bit later. So that's intel and targeting. And that's not actually a cyber. What I'm trying to tell you about this complicated picture is that there's no such thing as cyber warfare. This is not cyber warfare. This is hybrid warfare when I am using different kinds of cyber as one weapon, and I'm combining that weapon to the other parts in my hybrid to actually get into my goals that I'm trying to do in my tactics and probably in my operations. And we haven't seen this that much. If we want to learn more, actually this is in Finnish in my blog, which is actually in the Apu. If you put there Pimeyden professori in your Google, you'll probably find it. This was published in the May 2020 for the Tieto exercise that year. Two other parts. Cyber is easy to use, is said often. Well, is it? The denial of the service attack. Well, you can buy those. You can load the weapons. It's rather easy. You can use those. Schoolboys can use those. Finland has seen few of those already this year. The bronze soldier was probably in Estonia one of the biggest things in those days when they started. But yes, it's quite easy. You can mask your intel. You can use fools that you found out, and you can take them as a ransom. And of course, if you are a military guy, there's no ransomware. There's just only where, because even though that they are paying you, you will not open their computers. You will destroy them. But we have also seen that, and I'm not talking here about the criminals. You can crowdsource and direct that crowd. And Ukraine is doing that very effective way as we speak. They are crowdsourcing Westerners, normal citizens from the West who are actually making crimes in the Western according to Western legislation when they are attacking all kinds of in many places in Russia. But Russia also can do that. They can use the same things. They also have a lot of hackers in their side. If they start attacking Finland, well, fire is free. And those people, they are not trying to hack up our banking system or something like that because it's too complicated. They may find out water stations in the backwoods. They may find out house automatization, which is open. So actually your electricity or your ventilation or something goes mad in the normal buildings all over. They can find medical equipment, not maybe in the hospitals, but in the homes where people are treating themselves and everything is now connected. And actually, I think this crowdsourcing is not a good idea, even though that we are thinking that you should do everything to help Ukraine, because then somebody might do the same to you. But that's only my attitude. Then the zero-day attacks, they are something that you buy, they are something that you find, but then there comes the next day. You can use the zero-day attack only once, because the next day it's not the 0 day, it's the first day. And in the third day, the attack is already gone because the things that you found out, what you used, you weaponized, they are not there anymore. So if you say that cyber is cheap, the weapons are cheap, well, they might be, but they are also kind of weapons that you can only use once. If you have those artillery munitions that Rautalinko was talking about, you can shoot only also all of the 1,000 ammunition that you have. In cyber, you can shoot only 3 times, and then all your stack is gone. And it's not so easy to actually make a decision when to use this. And then the advanced persistent threat. Well, you can use them. You can break almost anything. Or some say that you can break anything. But then they must be important targets. It takes a long time and it takes a lot of resources. So I'm not saying that cyber is easy. It's actually quite complicated. And then when you are already in, your cyber attacker says that we are in. The first question is, are we in or are we in the honeypot? If we are in, where are we? Are we really in the paper mill that I wanted to attack or the energy station and not in the hospital? When the time goes by, we have to be certain that we are still in. So somebody hasn't altered anything, because you don't have to find out the cyber attacker. You may just do something upgrading in your system, and actually those things that were used may alter in that way that you are not certain that you are still in. Is that the red button? Is a thing that the paper mill guy says? Well, we are in the paper mill, but what is actually the button what you press, and then the whole mill is stopping? You don't know if it's stopping. You don't actually know whether that is a red button, and you don't know what happens before you push the button. So will it stop? Will it even break? Can I break the paper machine and not just stop that? Well, nobody knows before you push the button. And then, of course, you have to ask, can we get out without a trace? Well, it's said that it's easy to deny, but actually is it? And what's important for the guy who is planning the whole hybrid is that you are doing it exactly in the time that you were tasked, in the situation that you were tasked, in a place that we wanted to hit, and with those things that you promised to do. So, for example, the mill is stopping, or even the paper machine is breaking down. And this is a lot more complicated in cyber than it is in the normal warfare. And then my last slide about the physical aspects. So vice versa. The data centers, they are actually places. There are no such things as cloud data clouds. They are just server rooms. In 9/11, there were many companies that were actually destroyed, not only as a physical places, but also in the cyber places, because they had their data in the same building or maybe in the next building, which was destroyed all the time. The fiber optic cables, well, actually, internet is lying in those fiber optic cables, and most of that are in the sea, and nobody can protect them. Not at least not in a 100% way. The excavator and the anchor
Recording in progress.
are very good ways of destroying them. Then the GPS is you can always jam that. I'm not using GNSS because that means also the Russian GLONASS, the Chinese and the European Union Galileo. But I remind you that GPS that we all of us are using all the time, we can't even read the maps anymore, and we can't go anywhere without a GPS. Actually, that is a military equipment made by United States. And it's very easy to jam with electronic warfare for long times from huge areas. And in Finland, actually half of Finland can be without GPS for long times if Russians are making the decision in that way. And we actually can't prevent it in any ways. HPM pulse. HPM, high power microwave, is actually, if you think about your microwave oven, you take the equipment out of there, you put an antenna, and you get the microwave. And actually, those weapons are coming better and better all the time. There's a container in my picture. And actually, we were discussing when I was still working in the military, is it possible to make a HPM bomb that is destroying all of the RFID chips in the whole harbor? And then nobody knows what's there inside the containers, who they belong to. And we are going more and more in that direction. And it is a cyber attack, but actually those RFID cells, they are destroyed. They are burned. They are not answering you anymore. There's no way to actually put the information back in them. And of course, then I have to use also this phrasing, EMP, which actually happens when you are blowing up the nuclear weapon, the atomic bomb. If you are using that, it will make huge cyber effects to the whole area it's used. And there are bombs that make that effect for tens or thousands of square kilometers if that's needed. And there are bombs that are actually made for that. So they are not made for the physical effect, they are made for the cyber effect. And we have to remind those. And there are two books that I want to say you. Verkkotaistelu 2020 we made in 2004. We knew that we can't see what cyber is going to be in the next 15 years. And actually the cyber as a word wasn't invented on those times. But we made the same book again and named it Cyber or Kybertaistelu 2020 in the year 2015. And then we knew a lot more about what might happen in 2020. And maybe there's something that is beneficial for you if you haven't read those. You can find them in Doria, in the National Defense University's library. They are open books. And actually, this was the things that I wanted to tell you. And now I want to answer the questions. So maybe I stop sharing and start listening. Thank you.
I have to ask you first, Mika, because this is pretty hot topic at the moment, as you know, and we all know in Finnish media about the physical aspects of the digital society, meaning especially the sea cables. What are your current viewpoints on that issue?
Well, I have to say that it was a show of power. It was a show of power of the most biggest infrastructure that lies in the seabed, the gas pipes. If that was done by something that wasn't inside the pipes, they actually showed whoever did it. We can always guess that they can do it again, and they can do it in a very effective way, and with a very huge explosives, and almost anywhere. And if we try to prevent it, it takes a lot of effort. We have to put all of our Navy ships there. Well, we already have a French ship in here in Finland, which is actually seeking mines. But what a coincidence! But the exercise already started, and we are happy to have 3 new warships in Finland that are quite new, who can actually see what is happening in the seabed. But you can put those in your map and think how much they can actually protect. So it is a huge vulnerability, and it's something that we can always think that you can take 1 or 2 or 3 hits, but how many hits they can actually generate? Can we see? Will we see that? I don't know, but that is a possibility. Thanks.
I know, Mika, that you have been. Thank you. I know that you have been following very carefully what is happening in the war in Ukraine at the moment, and we heard from Esa before you key learnings so far from the war of Ukraine. How would you summarize 2 main learnings so far from the war of Ukraine?
Well, I stick in the cyber. My first thing is that Ukraine is a normal war where you actually use other means to help that. So it's not a hybrid war. I'm more keen on the war that could go against us in Finland. So that is not the war that you can actually see the cyber so clearly. And the other aspect is that I'm quite certain that those guys who are running cyber, they didn't know when the war is going to begin. So they didn't have that kind of combined plans that I was now showing you. But if somebody is attacking Finland, well, they will have. So we can't think that they are that they can't actually do what we are expecting them to do. I think that we have overestimated a bit, but I hope that we are not so stupid that we think that they are stupid, because if you think that your enemy is stupid, it's the first lesson how to lose the war and lose all the battles. And that comes from Sun Tzu from 3,000 years ago. Thanks.
So what about, Mika? I have to ask you this, because there is quite a lot of speculation at the moment in media and in different discussions that what Putin will do next. Is that good to think about, or is that something what Kreml likes us to speculate all the time, that what is coming next? What are your thoughts?
Well, of course, we have to think that as a professionals, but do we have to all the time discuss about that? It's another thing, and I think that we have to be more prepared, and we have to be more prepared in the basic ways. So everybody has to be more prepared, starting from the citizen all the way to the government level. But I would like to see more cooperation between the authorities, for example. The COVID issue was not enough for that nyrkki that was presented, but I hope that now there's someone, a group of people who are trying to put all the lines together, because nobody has the education to use all of those hybrid ways in a warfare. There's no teaching for that. I have been now learning about, I could make almost a similar kind of presentation about the information nowadays. I could almost make a presentation also about the economics. nowadays that I just gave you about the cyber. But I'm just learning about this complexity of hybrid. And I think that is the most important thing. The combinations, we have to try to figure out what the combinations are. Not be so worried about the small things and then express everything from that the whole world is going to collapse. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mika. My last question, because I like your title, Professor of Darkness, as you mentioned. How well you sleep during nighttime?
I sleep well, I think, because when you are seeing the nightmares, you can use them, all of them, in the morning, because that's my job. So seeing nightmares is actually a good thing for me. Now that was a joke, but when you are prepared, you are not so worried about that. When you know about things, you feel that you are part of the solution and you are not the target, and that actually makes you sleep better. At least I think so.
Good. Thank you very much, Mika Hyytiäinen, and thank you everybody for attending this week's public lecture series. Excellent presentations once again from Esa Rautalinko and from Mika Hyytiäinen. And we will continue next week, same time and same place. Have a safe week. Thank you.